Any nation can lose its wealth, its government, and even its territory and still live on. But if it loses its language, nothing will remain of it. Assalamu alaikum, this is Fin with you. Today we will talk about the Azerbaijani language, how it returned from oblivion, the debates around it and its name, as well as its place among other languages. And don't forget to answer the question at the end of the video. We will highlight the most interesting answer. Gettik. An isolated language or language isolate is a language that doesn't belong to any known language family. Examples include Basque in Europe or Korean in the Far East. However, the vast majority of the world's languages belong to certain language families. Azerbaijani is no exception. It belongs to the Turkic language family, to the Western Oghuz subgroup, together with Turkish and Turkmen. The lexical similarity between them reaches at least 80%. At the same time, Azerbaijani preserves some Kipchak features that are absent in Turkish. Belonging to a language family brings obvious advantages, cultural and linguistic exchange, but at the same time makes it harder to form a full independent literary language. The roots of the modern Azerbaijani language go back to the early Middle Ages. In the 10th, 11th centuries, the ancestors of today's Azerbaijanis used an oral, dialectal Turkic speech with admixtures of Persian vocabulary, Arabic religious terminology, and Caucasian linguistic elements. At the same time, writing for a long time remained in Persian and Arabic. As in many societies of that era, the language of the people and the language of the elites differed greatly. Arabic dominated in religion and science, Persian in poetry and administration. Turkic remained the language of the Armenian folklore. For example, the Oghuz epic, the Book of the Dede Korkut, strongly influenced the language vocabulary, syntax, and imagery. From the Safavid era, the 15th century, Turkic gradually became the language of the Shah's court and military elite, not to be confused with Ottoman, the language of the Sultan's court and administration. Medieval poets from Nizami in the 13th century to Vagif in the 18th century shaped the classical literary language under strong Ottoman, Persian and Arabic influence. This reflected the reality of the Muslim world of that time, where identity was built primarily around the ummah, that is the religious community, rather than ethnicity and even less the nation. In the 18th and early 19th centuries, Turkic, then not yet called Azerbaijani, was the main language of everyday and inter-ethnic communication. The example of Sayat Nova is telling. A significant part of his surviving works is in this language. Already as part of the Russian Empire, Turkic retained the role of a lingua franca in the Caucasus and Iran. Over time, Russian scholars and poets who visited the Caucasus began to perceive it as an independent language rather than a dialect of Turkish, a language of trade and inter-ethnic communication, comparable in spread to French in Europe. The second half of the 19th, early 20th centuries became a period of codification and standardization of Azerbaijani. With the appearance of the newspaper Akinci in 1875, heated debates unfolded in what language to write and what the literary standard should be. On one side were supporters of Persian, on the other a group led by Hasan Bey Zardabi, who deliberately used the living language of the people. Zardabi himself preferred Ottoman to Persian, but recognized that the former was difficult for ordinary people to understand because of its excess of Arabic borrowings. Nevertheless, by the end of the 19th century, periodicals in Ottoman began to dominate. After the 1905 revolution, the confrontation between Azerciler and Osmanlılar took on a political character. The former advocated the development of a local literary language, while the latter supported cultural and linguistic union with Ottoman Turkey, with all the political consequences that entailed. The magazine Molla Nasreddin became the mouthpiece of the idea of a popular, accessible language, warning against the alienation of society from the press and literature. In the Soviet period, the policy of indigenization ensured the final establishment of the Azerbaijani literary language. The main goal of the new authorities was to spread Soviet ideology to the masses through language. In 1976, it received the official name, Azerbaijani language. 20 years later, its state status was finally inscribed in the constitution, later reaffirmed in the last constitution of the Azerbaijan SSR in 1978. After independence, the debate over the name of the language flared up again. By the way, we have a separate video about the dispute over the country's name. The law of the 1992 returned the term Turkic language. and this is how the subject native language was labeled in school diaries. A landmark controversy on the topic unfolded between former President Heydar Aliyev and the people's poet and honored artist Bakhtiyar Vahabzadeh. Aliyev, as a statesman, cited Slavic countries as examples where each nation speaks its own separate language. Vahabzadeh, as a philologist, referred to the Arab world where dialects of one language exist. Each was right in its own way. Although the 1995 constitution finally confirmed the name Azerbaijani language, the debate over its naming remains open to this day. For some, it reflects state logic, for others, a philological one. Today, Azerbaijani is considered a language of medium difficulty. It lacks grammatical gender and articles, which is a big plus for foreigners learning it. Has transparent phonetics and a high degree of grammatical regularity, almost no exceptions. Words are generally read the same way they are written. We recently had a separate video about the national alphabet, link in the description. At the same time, the unusual word order, for example, the verb usually comes at the end. Cases and vowel harmony require time to master, especially for speakers of Indo-European languages. Compared with other languages, Azerbaijani is more difficult than English, especially at the initial stage, but more systematic and logical in the long run. It's easier than Polish, believe me, where pronunciation creates additional difficulties. And of course, it is learned faster than Arabic, Chinese, or Japanese. The Azerbaijani language has come a long way, from oral dialect speech to a codified literary language that has become the foundation of national identity. It has not only consolidated society and statehood, but also become one of the key characteristics of millions of people, both inside and outside Azerbaijan. And what do you think? What is the correct name for language? Azerbaijani or Turkic? And why? Subscribe, like, click the bell, leave comments and share this video with friends. By the way, this video is also available in Russian, and remember, there is no good or bad culture. There is just a different culture. In conclusion, I would like to congratulate everyone on the coming new year. May it be better, happier and more successful than the outgoing one. See you next year. Salamat kalın.